Welcome to the Environmental Justice Lab. I am your host, Dr. Leslie Joseph. Thank you so much for joining me. And I just want you to know that it is May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so all throughout the month, we're talking about how to take care of your mental health, how to think about mental health, make sure you get some help, make sure you're keeping your mental health just as healthy as your physical health, because it's just as important. We have to make sure our mental health is prioritized, especially in these days with so many things changing, so many things around us just being unsettling and difficult to manage. We need to make sure our mental health is prioritized, and even especially as it relates to the environment, environmental justice, environmental inequity. These things cause mental anguish and stress. When we think about the fact that many of us live in areas, live in places that have been forgotten, that have been abandoned, that have been sacrificed for economic development, for waste dumping, for industrial activity. All of these things can weigh on you mentally and emotionally. When you think about, or when we think about climate change, right? It's this big concept out there where everything around us is changing. Everything is not the way it used to be because the climate is changing. It can cause some concern, some anxiety, some fear. And so for this episode and for this month, we want to talk about that. And I want to start off first by letting you know that it's a real thing. It's a real thing. I don't know if people have tried to tell you not to have any mental or emotional feelings or concerns related to the environment, related to the way the climate is changing, but these things are reality. There's even a term for it. The term is climate anxiety, right? Climate anxiety. The idea is that you can have concerns, fears about current environmental harm and damage, future environmental harm and damage, natural disasters, climate change wreaking havoc where you live, and it can cause anxiety. You can experience anger, depression, PTSD in many cases. There are several researchers that have shown that after natural disasters, after major environmental events, chemical spills, nuclear disasters. There was a study a few years ago about Flint, Michigan, and how the Flint, Michigan water crisis caused PTSD for a lot of the residents. These are real concerns, real issues. And having that anxiety, having those mental health issues related to the environment can harm you physically too. Not just the pollution from where you live, but just anxiety around the fact that you're experiencing these issues can cause physical harm, right? It can weaken your immune system. It can hurt you and keep you from recovering from other injuries. If you have any concerns, any health issues, it can exacerbate them. It can strain your relationships. If you're in school, if you're trying to learn on a job, it can hinder your ability to learn and accomplish things. So many things can happen when you're dealing with climate anxiety. And so I don't want you to feel like you're out there alone in the room concerned about what you're going to do the next time a hurricane comes through. What are you going to do if the sea levels keep rising on the coast where you live? What are you going to do when the heat wave comes through again and you barely made out the last time? What's going to happen now? It can understandably cause anxiety. There's a name for it. Climate anxiety. Use the term, understand the term, and recognize that it's a real mental health concern that people have related to the way the environment and the climate is changing, and the ways in which they are disproportionately impacted by those changes. Because it's one thing if a hurricane comes, a tornado comes, and we kind of all have the same experience. We help each other recover, and we're all back on our feet. And we're, resilient, and we're working towards improving our communities. And we are here together. We have support from our local industries, our local governments, our local elected officials, and we're moving forward. That's one thing. But if you know that if another tornado comes, another hurricane comes, another earthquake comes, that you're going to be in even worse condition than you were since the last one came. And because climate's changing, there's a high possibility that you'll get more of these types of events that will then keep you from recovering from the last one you experienced. And over and over and over again, it can cause anxiety. It can cause a sense of hopelessness, a sense of despair. So many things can happen. So many issues can come up because of this feeling of knowing that your community can't take another disaster. It can't take another crisis. It's just too much. And so I want us all to just think about and acknowledge that this can be a reality. And if it's not for you a reality, it could be for someone else who's dealing with these kinds of issues and doesn't know what to do, how to respond, what to tell their families the next time the hurricane comes, the next time the tsunami comes, the next time the earthquake hits, the next time the heat wave rushes over, the next time flooding happens. What do we do? What do we say? We didn't get past the last one. Now what? It can cause climate anxiety. And so I want to think about that. And furthermore, there has been a lot of work, a lot of research done to investigate the mental distress of environmental injustice. So a lot of times we talk about the physical issues, right? We talk about the asthma, the cancer rates. We talk about COPD. We talk about heart disease. We talk about respiratory illnesses and how those are disproportionately found in different communities because they experience environmental injustice, right? Higher rates of diabetes and cancer in Black communities that live in certain parts of the United States. Higher rates of heart disease and other issues. People who live near certain industries, that live near certain mining activities. All of these things, we talk about them. We know it's true. We know it happens. But we need to stop this May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and acknowledge that there's mental stress, there's mental distress associated with these environmental injustices. And so I read an amazing article written by the Urban Health Council. The title was The Mental Distress of Environmental Injustice. And it's a great report. I'm going to link it in the description of this episode. You need to read it. You need to understand that there truly is a monumental amount of mental health issues related to environmental injustice. Now, the report focuses on air pollution specifically, but I think it applies to all types of environmental injustice that you could experience. And what they do, which I love in the article, is that they highlight 3 specific aspects of the mental distress that is experienced when you are faced with environmental injustice. And the first one they mention is trauma. It's trauma, straight out the gate. Trauma. They define trauma as knowing that your family, your friends, and your neighbors will be exposed to these harmful debilitating pollutants, the contamination, and that knowledge, just the knowledge, is stressful and frightening, right? So it's one thing to experience it. It comes, you didn't know it was coming. Oh no, here it is. What are we going to do about it? That's one thing. But to know that it's coming, to know that where you live, to know that the people around that you care about will be exposed disproportionately to pollution, to contamination, will experience injustice, and will be adversely affected by the way things go in your community, that knowledge is stressful. It's frightening, right? Being aware that you live in an area that's unhealthy, like, right, you're looking around and you know that you need to drink the water because you need water to drink. You have to walk through, breathe this air because this is where you live. And you know that the people that you care about that are around you have to deal with the same things you're dealing with. And to know that the quality is poor, that it's not suitable for people to be exposed to. It's traumatic and distressing. And so just being aware of that and knowing that causes trauma. It causes an experience that is highly distressful and hard to deal with and overcome, especially if you have no resources to protect yourself from this contamination, or if you have no ability to move away from it. Right? So it's one thing to look around and say, oh, we can't live here. It's not safe. And you leave. Fine. Maybe you didn't know. Maybe things changed over time. You decided it no longer is safe to be here. You leave. It's no problem. You're done. But everybody can't just get up and go. People don't have the options to just pack up and sell their house and buy a new one in a different, healthier, better neighborhood. And so if you're not able to do that, and you know that things aren't going to change, it is very distressing. Very, very, very distressing. And it can cause trauma. And it's just the first aspect of the mental distress of environmental injustice. That's the first one. The second one that this report kind of outlines, which I'm telling you, this is a great report: uncertainty and powerlessness. Right? Uncertainty and powerlessness is the second one. So uncertainty, not knowing, right? You don't have the information that you need. You don't truly understand what's happening around you. So this happens all the time. There's mistrust and there's concern that when you meet with a public official, when you meet with the person who's responsible for the quality of your environment, that they're not giving you all the information. They're not telling you the true risks that are inherent in what's happening around you. This happens all the time, right? When a new corporation comes in with a new industry and they tell you about all the jobs that are going to come, they tell you about all of the economic activity that will happen when they show up to your community, and they know in their mind that you're going to love all the benefits that come with having this industry housed in your neighborhood, adjacent to your community. But then when it's time to talk about environmental risks, environmental hazards, potential contamination, possible pollution, then they start backing up a little bit. They're less forthcoming. They're less willing to share with you the true risks that are involved. And so now you're just uncertain. You just don't know what's going to happen when they actually land and start operating in your neighborhood. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? Are we going to get sick? Are we going to be healthy? We don't know. You're uncertain. And that uncertainty, that vague, I'm not so sure about this feeling, causes distress, right? It causes continued anxiety, because at any moment things could go south and you don't know what that could mean for you and your family. And so you're uncertain. but then you're also powerless. And this is the story that we hear all the time from communities, right? All around the world, that even if they understand and know that certain things are bad for their community, they have no ability to even give voice to it, to even speak to that reality, right? How are we going to tell the people who make these decisions that this is a bad decision? That don't bring that over here unless you're going to do this to protect us, right? You don't have the ability to influence the decision makers to really determine how your community is protected and what comes in and out of where you live. And when you don't have any power, you don't have any ability to make that kind of an influence, right? You're hopeless. You feel helpless, right? You know things need to be different, but there's no way to change it. You're stressed out continually. You're tired, tired of fighting, tired of going to the meetings, tired of writing letters, tired of signing petitions, tired of complaining to your neighbors, tired of the process of electing and voting and, participating in the process, because you know in the end it's not going to result in anything that changes your reality. And so when you have this lack of power, this lack of control over your own environment, it makes you unhealthy physically and mentally, and it just compounds the distress, right? So think about it. So you have this traumatic awareness of your environment, how it's unhealthy, it's not clean, it's not suitable to raise your family in. You don't have the ability to get out and leave it. Part one of your distress. You don't know exactly how bad it could get. You don't know exactly what the harm is going to be to you, to the people that you care about. You don't know what's going to happen, how these companies operate, how this industry functions, what are they producing, what kind of pollution is possible, what could happen here. Uncertainty adds to the distress. You're compounding it. And now you feel powerless. You go to the meeting, you speak up, you speak out. They tell you to go vote. They tell you to go elect the people that can represent you well and have your best interest in mind. When they go into office, they get there, nothing changes. Nothing is different. Or you live so outside of any particular jurisdiction that you don't actually have representation in front of you that actually represents you, right? That happens a lot of times where you might live outside of a county, you might live in a very rural part of a city, you might live in a place that is not necessarily incorporated. And so now, who represents you? Who's making decisions on your behalf? The people who are in power, you didn't vote for them because you had no representation. And now you're powerless to make anything different. You don't have anybody to point to say, I need you to fix this, to help us to deal with these problems that we're experiencing in our community. And that feeling, that powerlessness, it just adds to the stress. We're just adding to it. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? How are you going to manage this time? That's the second one. We got trauma. We got uncertainty and powerlessness. And the last one that they mention is injustice. The injustice itself is mentally distressing, right? Because it's one thing if these random events happen and you happen to be a part of experiencing it. It's one thing when that's the case. It's a completely different thing when we know that it's not random. It might feel random at times. People might want you to think that when the hurricane comes, it hits all of us, but some of us live in communities that are less resilient, that are more vulnerable because of how they've been built and how they've been neglected. And we know that because of that, these things hurt us more. We also know, just from history, that certain communities are targeted for certain types of pollution. Landfills go in certain areas, industrial facilities go in certain areas, solid waste management facilities go in certain areas. Like, right? We see the research, we know for a fact that this is the case. And so if you are aware of that, if you know that there's unadulterated injustice associated with your environmental condition, it's very mentally distressing. Very distressing, right? You're discriminated against, right? Because of your skin color, because of your immigration status, because of your, it could be anything, gender, religious affiliation, all these things. You could be a Native American community. And you know, because of that classification, you're experiencing disproportionate environmental harm. That's a problem. Because you're in a low income community, it doesn't mean you should experience more waste dumping, more trash burning, more industrial chemical contamination. But when you experience that injustice, when you know it's an injustice, that you're being treated unfairly, unjustly, it increases the mental distress that you experience. It increases the depression. It increases the anxiety. It does all those things because this is not a coincidence, right? It's not a coincidence that the people who look like me deal with more pollution than people who look like you. It's not a coincidence, right? And the researchers knows for a fact. They've outlined it. They've documented it. We know that this is truly the case, right? And the experience of injustice, any kind of injustice, racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, xenophobia, all of these things are associated with increases in mental health issues among those populations, right? So you put that injustice on top of the environmental injustice all together, and now we have a big problem. We have a big issue, and it's creating a tremendous amount of mental and emotional distress because of what you're dealing with. And so we have to be aware that environmental injustice does more than just harm communities physically in disproportionate ways. We have to also acknowledge that environmental injustice harms communities disproportionately in mental and emotional ways. We have to acknowledge that. We have to recognize that that is the case. And we have to be aware of that when we start to think about these different communities and what they're experiencing. It's not going to be enough to try to just remove the pollution, to remove the contamination, to remove the pollution. We're going to have to go in and consider the mental health of these communities as well. We have to think about how we can intervene in a way that supports them mentally as well as physically. We have to do that. It's so important to consider that. And for those of you who are experiencing environmental injustice where you live, where you're from, whether it's you or your family, people you care about, just know that we understand that it's more than just a physical problem, more than just an environmental problem. That is also a mental health problem as well. That your experiences, the way that you have endured environmental injustice, will continue to impact you mentally and emotionally. And we want to make sure that that's clear, and that when we talk about these injustices, that we also incorporate an understanding that mental health is just as big a part of the fallout and the impact as the physical aspects, as the emotional aspects, as the environmental aspects. They all matter. And so in May, in Mental Health Awareness Month, let's all remember that our mental health is just as important as our physical health, and that environmental injustice impacts our mental health just as much as it impacts our physical health. Some would argue even more so, because the mental health issues can persist long after the physical ones are dealt with. And so let's be aware, let's recognize that that is the case, and let's, at least for this month, think about that reality for the people who live and who experience environmental injustice all around the world. All around the world. I'll say this last thing. So, one thing that has been really on my heart lately are children of conflicts. One thing that we know, and we talked about in other episodes, that conflict is a big driver of environmental injustice, right? Wars, fighting, people who go to battle with other countries, other militia groups or rebel groups, they do things to the environment to try and undermine their enemy's ability to function and to fight back, right? So you cut off water and electricity and fuel and food, and you destroy different aspects of the infrastructure that they need to survive on, and you harm the civilian population in ways that honestly are unlawful, but are meant to, I guess, in the words of the aggressors, bring people to their knees and bring them to the table to force them to make a deal and force them to relent in their engagement. But what people don't think about are the children who are grossly impacted by these types of approaches to war and conflict, right? The children who don't have the food they need, don't have the medicine that they need, don't have health care that they need to survive, don't have clean water, no place to go to the bathroom, nothing. They have nothing. And we talk about those things. We talk about the illnesses. We talk about the disease, the spread of these kinds of diseases, but we don't talk about the mental impact, the emotional impact that these conflicts have on the children. And it's going to be with them for the rest of their lives. A 5-year-old boy whose parents are both killed in a bombing. The teenager who watches their parents, watches their siblings die of starvation. The people who have to hold these children in their hands while they get medical procedures without any anesthesia, without any painkillers, nothing. These children, long after the war is over, long after the physical aspects of their bodies are healed, they're going to carry this mental anguish, this mental distress for decades at least. There's a need, and this is a call to all of the mental health professionals out in the world. There are places where you are needed more than ever in these days because of these types of conflicts. I'm thinking specifically about Haiti, where there's just gang violence run amok. And I have family there who the kids can't go to school. They don't know where the next meal is coming from. They don't know what's going to happen. There is no true governing structure there. The kids are suffering. And I know they're suffering mentally as well as emotionally and educationally. I know they are. I'm thinking about children in Sudan. I'm thinking about children in the Congo. I'm thinking about children in Gaza. I know you've seen the stories. I know you've seen the video. It's on video. These children who don't have parents anymore. These children who have been shot by snipers, shot by soldiers who didn't do anything, who have nothing to do with the war, nothing to do with the conflict, targeted, right? Hospitals, schools, everything destroyed. These children will have mental health issues for decades. They just will. And it's conflict, it's environmental injustice, it's just injustice in general, it's being forgotten by the broader international community, it's being ignored by international laws, all of these things. And all these different conflicts, that's just some of them. There's Ukraine, there's conflicts in parts of Asia, and I just read about escalating tension and violence in India and Pakistan. Like, all of these things are going to result in children dealing with these mental health issues from these conflicts. And I promise you, environmental injustice will be at the center of a lot of these issues. And so we need to have that in our minds. We need to consider that as we talk about the true impact of environmental injustice. We spent a lot of time on the physical. At least this month, let's talk about the mental, because it's a big problem and we need everyone to be aware of how important it is to take care of your mental health. To take care of your mental health, please. It is just as important as your physical health. And as you do that, think about, pray about, visit, consider the people near you and far from you who deal with environmental injustice, who cannot get out, and who will experience significant mental distress as a result. Let's think about them, pray for them, and take action to change things around us. That's what we need to do. And that's our episode of the Environmental Justice Lab podcast. Thank you so much for listening, where we are for the people and for the planet. I will see you next time.